Hi, I'm Diego. I am a lead developer in Salesforce, currently at Close Brothers. Today we're talking Mixins, which I will class, in my mind anyway, which is the only place that matters, as an intermediate JavaScript technique for extending code and sharing inheriting code. So any of you that are not into JavaScript, this will be geeky and dry. Thankfully, as always, I'm a very sexy speaker, so if anybody needs to swoon, go ahead. Little bit about me. This is me, that's my mom's dog. My favorite flower is pomegranate flower, and I collect fountain pens, and that's all you get to hear about me. Today's agenda, very, very simple. We're gonna start with the driest possible definition. We'll move through that rather quickly, just to establish what a mixin actually is. We will create a simple mixin. It says let's create. Do not mistake this for live coding. I do not do live coding. I learned that lesson a long time ago. It's never a good idea. So I'll show you how to create a simple mixin. We'll talk about mixins versus more common inheritance, extensions. We'll go through use cases, issues and downfalls. And then I'll show you how to create a mixin factory. So, is anybody here familiar with the concept of what a mixin is? Yeah, thank you. Few people. And I'm assuming most people have at least used in LWC the NavigationMixin. Right, so you know the NavigationMixin is a simple extension to the Lightning Element class that allows you to use the method navigate. So what is a mixin? This is the dry part I was talking about. I'm very sorry. A mixin is an abstract superclass. What that means is that it has a definition and an application, i.e. it's a superclass, i.e. it's something to be inherited from, but unlike a normal superclass, it's split. It can be applied to multiple superclasses, and the application is application of the superclass to a new superclass producing a subclass. Isn't that fun? Oh, I love it. Really what we care about is it's a pattern that enables inheritance of the behavior of multiple classes. All of you, we're at a developer meetup, have worked with Apex, have worked with JavaScript. You know about inheritance, presumably, so you know how classes can extend each other. A mixin is kind of like that, but more flexible, and we'll go through exactly how. So, this is how we normally inherit in JavaScript. We export a class which extends the Lightning element. We put a little thing in here, which is a method, a property, a wire, anything that we want to inherit. And then we export that class as the default in our actual LWC implementation. So in this case, all this does is I'm saying, hi, Diego. When the component that this is part of a bundle of connects, it says, hi, Diego, in the console. Very simple, very normal. If you're not familiar with JavaScript, this is very simple as well, because it's the same thing that we do in Apex. The difference being that JavaScript is a little bit more, some people say creative, some people say chaotic, with how you can inherit, and therefore this Lightning element doesn't have to be defined as a virtual or abstract class. Nothing has to be overridden, it just is. JavaScript is lovingly chaos. If I want to do it as a mixin, we are using an interesting feature of JavaScript. When I say JavaScript gets chaotic, this is part of what I mean. In JavaScript, a class can actually be a return type of a function, which means that I can create a function which takes a base class and returns a class that extends that very same class that I've passed in as a parameter. Yeah, we're having fun now. This does exactly the same thing that the previous example did, but it does it in a way that is not possible in Apex, in Java, or in other languages. Mixins are really made for languages like Dart, but we're not going to go there. Here you can say, instead of doing this, where I have a class that clearly extends something, and then I export it, Here I'm exporting a function that returns the extended class, or the subclass, as it is. It does exactly the same thing. I've extended the functionality of, in this case, lightning element, to create this method, say hi to Diego, this function rather, JavaScript in Apex, and then it does it when it connected. So the obvious question to answer here is, why am I telling you this? Because this seems needlessly complicated, and honestly, sometimes it is. But that is true of a lot of JavaScript, I think we will agree. Why do we use Mixins? This is really the difference. When we are extending a class, you really work in an inheritance tree, because just like in Apex, in JavaScript, a class can only extend another class. So you have a superclass, you have something else that extends it, and then you've got your default export that extends that, and that's all you get. You can go down quite deep with this, but once you've defined these two, they are in a tree. So this one will always extend this one, no matter what you do. It's not particularly flexible. Because in JavaScript, we can return a class as the return type of a function, we can do this, which is way more fun if you are me, and potentially nobody else. But essentially, you can define as many mixins as you want. Let's call them A, B, C, D, and E here. And you can say, actually, I have an LWC where I want A and C, but not B, D, E. I didn't do it on purpose. I want another one that does A, B, skip C, D, and E. And I can do all of those without much trouble. There is some trouble, we'll go through it later. But essentially, it means that if I have a class that loads if I have a mixin that loads a library, a JavaScript library, another one that loads specific data, custom settings, custom metadata, very common use case, and another one that loads, I don't know, CSS, I can decide which ones to inherit in each one of my components. So let's take a look at this one, for instance. In this example, I have 3 mixins. One that defines the function say hi to Todd, one that defines the function say hi to Ellie, and one that defines the function say hi to Trooper.
Feels like you might be missing a mixin.
Yours is later. There's also Mixin 4, which says hi to Kia's wife. Hi, Kia. When I am actually implementing this, you can see that this one takes they all take a base class, but they're not necessarily defined. The class that they're extended is defined at runtime and not at compile, which is the big difference, right, between extending a class and using a mixin. So in this case, this is what you would write in your actual LWC implementation. You're exporting your default class, you're calling it whatever, presumably the name of your component, which extends mixin1, which takes as a parameter mixin2, which takes as a parameter mixin3, which takes lightning element. And now all of these, say hi to Todd, say hi to Ellie, say hi to Trooper, are available to me in the LWC that I am creating. Always available. Oh, thank you. Much like, no, I'm not going to go there again. Which takes us to use cases, because this is all good and fun if you are into the theory of it. But let's be honest, like it looks, even to me, it looks a little bit messy compared to just using extensions. So why would we want to use this stuff? This is a very common one, and I'm not saying that you want to use it for everything. Mixins are very much a feature that you decide to use very sparingly. But realistically, if you are working in an org that has a lot of LWCs, especially if you're a partner, but also if you're a client, you have really families of components that share certain features. And it's quite useful to use Mixins to decide flexibly which features you give to which components. in this one, we are loading libraries or styles. We all know these lovely things, which I mean, I don't love them, but they're there, I guess. And we are, I've done this wrong, but one way we can use it is we can have a D3 mixin, which imports the D3 library, potentially initializes it, does other stuff. You do this once, and from now on, you just use the mixin in any LWC that you want to apply D3 to. This kind of works for any CSS, it works for any library, and most importantly, you can leave it out of other combinations of mixins if you want. Second one, this is one that I've actually used before, and I love this one, it's so good. I say this myself. This is about sharing data context, database calls, wires, all sorts of stuff like that. Because really what you're exporting and what you're extending is a class. And a class in JavaScript, much like any object-oriented language, is just a definition of an entity with a collection of properties, functions, whatever you want to call them. You can actually extend properties in here. So say that you have some custom settings that you need to load for a number of LWCs in your org. One thing that you can do is you can put a wire in a mixin, which is useful because whilst this is lovely, and it's nice that we have a fairly simplified, actually, syntax for using wires in LWC, you don't want to repeat it over 50 components, theoretically. And depending on what you're wiring, you can use it in some and not others. Again, composability is kind of a key here. So this one, for instance, gets page settings, page setting data, it gets the data. Whichever LWC is extended from this mixin will get this property page setting data. If the wire runs correctly, great, you've got it there. Potential issues, and there are many. The first one is name conflicts. Because in JavaScript you do not need the override keyword or the virtual abstract keyword in order to actually override something, if you create a lot of mixins and you are careless about naming things, they will override each other. So avoiding common names like handle load or handle click is probably a good idea. Any methods with the same name will be overridden in the same order of the subclasses, which means, and this to me is actually kind of a killer when it comes to deciding whether to use mixins or not sometimes, the order in which mixins are called does matter. Because if we go back to the previous example, with saying hi to various people, let's say that this is all just called say hi. If I load mixin Lightning element and mixin 3 and mixin 2 and mixin 1, this makes mixin 1 the ultimate subclass, which means if the methods are all called the same, this is the only one that will actually get implemented. And because it's JavaScript against freedom chaos, you do not know until it's running. I mean, and when it's running, if you have a lot of mixins going together, it becomes increasingly hard to debug. Similarly, must be careful with calling super when required. Lifecycle hooks, that's another thing. Because a lot of the use cases that I showed you are around preloading things, very tempting to use lifecycle hooks for that. But because they're the same name in every extension of Lightning element, the last one to be called will be the connected callback that actually runs. There are ways around this, which are really around using super and about deciding to run a specific connected callback when something else runs. But it gets complicated. There are ways to do it, but at that point, honestly, it becomes a reason to abandon it. And also, they can become lengthy. They can add cognitive complexity. They can be hard to debug. If something is not running as you expect it, and you're mixing in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 mixins, actually debugging it, unless you are really good at your logging, becomes somewhat complicated. And some of this can be avoided with a builder class, which I'll show you next. This is taken from Cesar Para. He's really good. I do not claim this code. He's much better than me. This is how you would actually implement a Mixin builder. Because this looks somewhat readable now, honestly, because of the color coding, but also because of the fact that there's only 3 Mixins coming in. You don't have a lot of trouble understanding what's going on. But Mixins are so composable that potentially you can use n Mixins in there, right? So what you do instead is you do this. You create a Mixin builders. So we simply create a very, very easy function called mix. It takes a superclass, returns a Mixin builder with the superclass as a parameter. Super easy. It's got a property called superclass, and it's got something called with, which reduces the Mixins that you pass in as a series of parameters, not an array, although you could also do that, just not defined like this, and returns them mixed in order. The way you would implement something like this would then be this. You've got all of your Mixins, dog page, D3, third mixing, whatever, and mix. You actually define the class outside of the default export, and then you export the default using the mix function that we have here and then you just list them in the order that you want them. This provides a little bit more clarity about which one is going in first and which one is the ultimate subclass. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't be careful about naming your functions necessarily. Namespacing, which is not usually done in JavaScript, is quite useful in this case. But yeah, it's quite fun. And that was my very quick talk about a very, 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 very niche JavaScript technique.
Any questions?
Hello, how would you compare Mixins to multiple inheritance?
Mixins to multiple inheritance. Both are fine. Mixins, I think, in my mind anyway, because I haven't worked with multiple inheritance much, are just a little bit more flexible in terms of you can just define them individually and then do whatever you want with them. It's really when you're an ISV and you use like a number of external libraries, but not everywhere, and you don't want to lazy load them everywhere, it gives you that composability. But other than that, comparable. Yes?
Are there any speed advantages for the JIT compiler having more common code?
Are there any speed advantages? No, honestly, I don't think so. I haven't tried it, so I can't give you a definite answer on that, but I would be surprised if there were.
One last one.
Yeah.
Have you had any issues with IntelliSense or code completion using this technique?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you use AI tools specifically or to code, they do not like this stuff, like at all. They do not get it. I have had to create custom PMD rules for this as well because it detects things that it shouldn't. Yeah. Anything else? Oh, sorry. Hi.
Hey, so if you're talking about sharing and reusing components,
Yeah.
how different is that from utility modules where you already have helper classes in it?
Very good question. So helper classes, it really just helps. If you use helper classes instead of this, you would still have to load everything up front. So you'd have an endless list of imports. This kind of helps cut down on that a little bit. The other thing that I will say is with helper classes, you typically have functions that you import, but not an entire class, which means then in your lifecycle hooks, typically in your actual default export, you have to handle all of that each time, which I don't like doing personally, but it really comes down to personal preference. Hi.
Hello. Can you use this with TypeScript as well?
Can you use this? It is used with TypeScript. Yes, there is. I think one of my examples tries to make sure. Where are you? Yeah. It tries to make sure, for instance, that the base is a type of lining element, so that it has things like the lifecycle hooks. Obviously, you'd write this differently in TypeScript, but no, this is used in TypeScript all the time. In Salesforce, I do not know, but I don't see why not, because it just runs on the TypeScript engine. All right, I think that's me.